The board will now come to order. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Tyus, Alderwoman Flowers, Alderman Bosley, Alderman Moore, Alderwoman Hubbard, Alderwoman Ingracia, Alderwoman Young, Alderman Conway, Alderman Ortman, Alderman Vollmer, Alderman Villa, Alderman Arnowitz, Alderwoman Murphy, Alderwoman Howard, Alderwoman Green, Alderwoman Behringer, Alderman Roddy, Alderman Kennedy, Alderwoman Davis, Alderman Schmidt, Alderman French, Alderman Boyd, Alderman Vaccaro, Alderman Ogilvie, Alderman Cone, Alderman Williamson, Alderman Carter, Alderwoman Cruzen, President Reed,
Here.
Alderwoman Tyus, Alderwoman Flowers, Alderwoman Ingracia, Alderwoman Young, Alderman Ortman, Alderman Vollmer, Alderman Roddy, Alderwoman Davis, Alderman French, Alderman Williamson, Alderman Carter, Alderwoman Cruzen, 21 present.
A quorum being present, I'll ask everyone in the chambers and galleries who's able to stand to please rise for prayer. Giving all honor to God, Almighty God, source of all authority, we humbly ask guidance in our deliberations and wisdom in our conclusions. Amen. Introduction of honored guests. Any introduction of honored guests? Alderwoman from the 14th.
I'd like to have for my special guest today, President Reed, Senator Harry Kennedy, who is also the, excuse me?
Thought they said your cousin.
No, he's not my cousin. Who is also the committeeman for the 14th Ward, and Demetrius Alfred, who is the union rep for Firefighters Local 73, who is housed in the beautiful Bevo neighborhood in the shadow of the Bevo Mill.
All right, thank you. Welcome. Alderman from the 22nd.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I'd like to have as my honored guest this morning, Mr. Chris Pickle and Leroy Grant with AT&T.
Alderman from the 4th.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I'd like to have as my special guest today, Tom Villa's Jacket and Larry Arnowitz.
Alderman from the 20th.
President, members of the board, it's our honor today to have as our guest Todd Hake, representative from Carpenters District Council, Greater St. Louis, as well as Keith O. Taylor from the Carpenters District Council of Greater St. Louis.
Alderwoman from the 16th.
Thank you, Mr. President and members of the board. I would like to have as my special guest today, Anthony Lancia with the AGC.
Alderman from the 9th.
Never know when to stand up. Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I'd like to have for my honored guest today, Maureen McDonald, that's representative of the St. Louis Realtors Association, and also Ronnie Hour.
Any further introductions? Any further introductions? Any further introductions? Alderman from the 10th, like to wrap us up?
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. As we gather here on October 24th, today is National Bologna Day, and we are honored and privileged to have the spokesperson, Mr. Joe Vaccaro, here. Alderman from the 17th, you recognize on approval of the minutes.
Yes, Mr. President, I move that we approve the minutes of the October 10th, 2014 meeting.
Moved by the Alderman from the 17th. Entertain a second on that motion. Seconded by the Alderman from the 4th. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Report of city officials.
Report of city officials can be found in sections A, B, and C of the agenda and have been placed in all aldermen's mailboxes.
We dispense with line items 7 through line item 7. Would anyone like to take any bills off of any of our informal calendars? Would anyone like to take any bills off of any of our informal calendars? We will dispense with line items 8 through 10. First reading board bills.
Board Bill 173, sponsored by Alderman Roddy, an ordinance dissolving the special allocation funds for the Center for Emerging Technologies Project Area and for Automobile Road Redevelopment Project Area 1, terminating the designation of those portions of the City of St. Louis as redevelopment areas. Board Bill 174, sponsored by Alderman French, an ordinance pertaining to the use of digital audio and video portable recording devices by the St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department and containing a penalty clause. Board Bill 175, sponsored by Alderman Boyd, an ordinance repealing Ordinance 69594 and in lieu thereof, enacting a new ordinance prohibiting the issuance of any packaged liquor licenses for any currently non-licensed premises within the boundaries of the 22nd Ward Liquor Control District and containing an emergency clause. Board Bill 176, sponsored by Alderwoman Green, an ordinance recommended by the Board of Estimate and Apportionment authorizing the city to assign TIF revenues and municipal revenues attributable to the Southtown redevelopment area for the purpose of paying the principal and of interest on certain bonds to be issued by the Industrial Development Authority of the city. That's the extent of our first reading.
Reference to committee.
To the Public Safety Committee, Board Bills 174 and 175. To the Housing Committee, Board Bills 173 and 176. That's the extent of reference to committees.
Second reading.
Following board bills were reported out of Transportation and Commerce Committee. Board Bill 140, sponsored by Alderwoman Young, an ordinance recommended by the Port Authority Commission authorizing and directing the mayor and the comptroller to enter into a lease agreement between the city and ACL Transportation Services LLC for certain land and mooring privileges on the unapproved wharf for a period of 10 years commencing on the date of execution with three 5-year mutual options. Board Bill 143, sponsored by Alderman Conway, an ordinance recommended and approved by the Airport Commission, the Board of Public Service, and the Board of Estimate and Apportionment, authorizing 8 supplemental appropriation in the total amount of $519,300 from the Airport Development Fund into the Airport Schedule F CIP project for the payment of costs for work and services authorized therein and containing an emergency clause. Board Bill 144, sponsored by Alderman Conway, and ordinance recommended and approved by the Airport Commission, the Board of Public Service, and the Board of Estimate and Apportionment, establishing and authorizing the Public Works Improvement Program at a total estimated cost of $971,978 to be expended for the payment of costs for emergency work and services authorized herein and containing a severability and an emergency clause. Board Bill 145, sponsored by Alderman Conway, and ordinance recommended and approved by the Airport Commission, the Board of Estimate and Apportionment, authorizing a supplemental appropriation and set apart in the total amount of $1,078,022 from the Airport Development Fund to the annual budget for the current expenses of the government and containing an emergency clause. Board Bill 146, sponsored by Alderman Conway, and ordinance recommended and approved by the Airport Commission, the Comptroller, and the Board of Estimate and Apportionment, making certain findings with respect to the transfer of $2,050,000 of excess monies that the city intends to transfer from Debt Service Stabilization Fund to the Airport Development Fund, and containing a severability clause and containing an emergency clause. Board Bill 147, sponsored by Alderman Conway, and ordinance recommended and approved by the Airport Commission, the Board of Public Service, and the Board of Estimate and Apportionment, establishing and authorizing Public Works and Improvement Program at the total estimated cost of $30 million, authorizing an initial appropriation in the total amount of $13,287,271 from the Airport Development Fund and containing a severability clause and an emergency clause. Board Bill 148, sponsored by Alderman Conway, and ordinance recommended by the Airport Commission, the Board of Public Service, and the Board of Estimate and Apportionment, authorizing and directing the Director of Airports and the Comptroller to enter into an agreement and a contract of sale between St. Louis, the owner and operator of Lambert Airport, and North Park Partners, LLC, providing for the sale of approximately 6.475 acres of property owned by St. Louis for the sum of $225,000 and providing for a purchase of approximately .35 acres of property owned by North Park and for the sum of $17,700 and authorizing and directing the mayor and the comptroller to enter into and execute a quitclaim deed and containing a severability clause and an emergency clause. Board Bill 149, sponsored by Alderman Conway, and ordinance recommended by the Airport Commission and Board of Investment and Apportionment, authorizing and the director of airports and the comptroller to enter into and execute a dual customs agreement between the city owner and operator of Lambert Airport and Brownsville International Air Cargo Incorporated, memorializing the city's and BIAC's mutual understandings and commitments to each other for cooperation to obtain approval for, establish, and develop dual customs cargo facility at the airport and containing a severability clause. Board Bill 150, sponsored by Alderman Conway, and ordinance recommended and approved by the Board of Investment and Apportionment, authorizing and directing the director of airports and the comptroller to enter into and execute 7 on-air passenger vehicle rental concession agreements at Lambert Airport between the city and multiple concessionaires, containing an emergency clause. Board Bill, and the following Board Bill was put out of Convention and Tourism Committee. Board Bill 142, Committee Substitute, sponsored by President Reed, Alderman Schmidt, Alderwoman Tyus, Alderwoman Howard, Alderwoman Murphy, Alderman Villa, Ogilvy, Alderwoman Davis, Alderwoman Hubbard, and Alderwoman Cruzen, and Alderwoman Behringer, an ordinance pertaining to the establishment of a poet laureate position for the city, creating a poet laureate task force and an effective date. That's the extent of our second reading.
Dispense with line item 14, perfection consent.
Board Bill 131, sponsored by Alderwoman Tyus, an ordinance recommended by the Planning Commission to change the zoning of property from a single-family dwelling district to the F neighborhood commercial district in City Block 5090 for properties on Geraldine Avenue and containing an emergency clause. Board Bill 137, sponsored by Alderman Roddy, an ordinance recommended by the Board of Investment and Apportionment, authorizing the mayor to submit a 2015 through 2019 consolidated plan and a 2015 annual plan to the Department of Housing and Urban Development as required to apply for funding under the Federal Community Development Block Grant, Home Investment Partnership, Emergency Solutions Grant, and Housing Opportunities for Persons with AIDS Entitlement Programs, authorizing and directing the mayor and the comptroller to enter into and execute agreement with HUD for receipt of 2015 CDBG, Home ESG, and HOPWA funds, and containing an emergency clause. Board Bill 141, sponsored by Alderman Arnowitz, and ordinance authorizing and directing the medical examiner to accept grant monies from Mid-America Transplant Services offered for the improvement of the infrastructure and equipment of the medical examiner's office, and authorizing the medical examiner, upon approval of the Board of Investment and Apportionment, to expend the funds by entering into a contract or otherwise for said purposes, and containing an emergency clause. Board Bill 164, sponsored by Alderman Schmidt, and ordinance recommended by the Board of Investment and Apportionment, authorizing supplemental appropriation, amending Ordinance 69736, commonly referred to as the Annual Operating Plan for fiscal year 2014 through 2015, appropriating and setting apart projected excess receipts in the equitable relief from utility tax fund in the amount of $125,000 to provide for assistance to low-income residents of the city in the payment of their electric and gas utility bills for the current fiscal year, and containing an emergency clause. Board Bill 165, sponsored by Alderman Schmidt, and ordinance authorizing and directing the director of the Department of Human Services via the Homeless Services Division to accept the grant agreement award from U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development from the 2012 Continuum of Care grant application in the amount of $121,207, appropriating said funds and containing an emergency clause. Board Bill 166, sponsored by Alderman Schmidt, and ordinance authorizing and directing the director of the Department of Human Services via the St. Louis Area on Aging to accept a grant award from the Missouri Alliance of Area Agencies on Aging and to expend those funds for the Navigator Project services and the MA 4-letter award and containing an emergency clause. Board Bill 126, sponsored by Alderman Ortman, an ordinance pertaining to barbecuing in Benton Park and containing a penalty clause. That's the extent of perfection consent.
Alderman from the 17th, you recognize on the motion for the perfection consent calendar.
Yes, Mr. President, I move that we approve the perfection consent calendar.
Moved by the Alderman from the 17th, seconded by the Alderman from the 20th. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We will dispense with line items 16 through 19. I move for adoption of our courtesy resolution calendar. Entertain a second on that motion. Seconded by the Alderman from the 4th. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We'll dispense with line items 21 and 22. Miscellaneous unfinished business.
We have none.
Announcements.
Tuesday, Ways and Means Committee meeting at 9 a.m. in the Kennedy Room. Friday, full board meeting, 10 a.m. in the chambers. That's the extent of my announcement.
Any further announcements? Alderman from the 22nd.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members of the board, I'd like to announce that the 22nd Ward will have its ward meeting on Tuesday, October 28th at the Omega Center from 6 to 7:30, encouraging all constituents to come out. We will be discussing a proposed development at the I-70 and Goodfellow site.
All right. Any further announcements? Alderman from the 26th.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. On the 30th of October, we will have our meeting, 26th Ward, be held at Union Memorial Church, 6:30. We'll have Joe Edwards coming and speak about the trolley and also representatives from the Clee Gas. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Alderman from the 20th.
Mr. President, members of the board, today we are having a rally of Hands United for Families and Children in our neighborhoods surrounding the 20th Ward. It'll start at 2:50 p.m. for the 250th anniversary of the City of St. Louis. Following that, there will be a community resource fair at Thomas Dunn Learning Center, which is at 3113 Gasconade, and then a family-friendly movie tonight at 4025 Minnesota, which is the rec center at Marquette Park. So while you will probably not see this because it's a positive thing, there are a lot of people supporting our families and children every day in the city of St. Louis, and this is just a gesture of representation of how we are unified doing that going into the future.
All right. Alderman from the 28th.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. This weekend is Halloween in the Central West End. Begins tomorrow morning, this Saturday, even though Halloween's not until next Friday. Begins tomorrow morning, Saturday morning, with a 5K run for those of you wanting to get an early start. At 11 o'clock is the dog parade. Dress up your dogs and get a prize. At noon is trick-or-treating for the kids. At 1 o'clock is the kids' costume contest. And then registration starts at 6 o'clock for the adult-only costume contest for the evening. And judging is from 8 to 10, I believe it is. So welcome you all to the Central West End tomorrow. Maryland and Euclid is the hub, and hope you can make it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any further announcements? Alderman from 19.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. First, I'd like to announce that tonight is the Grand Center Gala. And the only reason I'm mentioning that is because David Stewart and his wife will be honored for the work that they've done in the community and the region, and I think they are well deserving of that. So I just wanted to give a special congratulations to them, and they're being honored with the music of Mavis Staples tonight. So a legend in our time, a definite legend. I also want to put everybody on notice. I'm going to be doing a holiday bazaar for St. Louis City. And I'm going to be begging everybody I ever thought I knew I could ask for something. So just be prepared. I want this holiday season to have a big bang in the city. I want people to feel good. I want children to feel safe. I want us to just come together and enjoy. So I'm preparing it, and you know me, I know how to give a party. So thank you.
Now, she's right about that. She knows how to give. Any further announcements? Any further announcements? Well, next Friday, this is our second annual Halloween party, for lack of a better way to put it, along Cherokee. So we're inviting kids from all over the city to come. If you want your kids to have a safe, secure Halloween, bring them over. We have all the businesses open all up and down the street. And we'll be working to make sure that each and every kid gets candy and masks and all kinds of things. It'll be a lot of fun. So if you have any kids or you know any kids that are looking for a great place to Halloween or trick-or-treat, have them come over to Cherokee. Any further announcements? Any further announcements? Alderman from the 4th.
Mr. President, I want you all to know that I'll be 30 Halloween.
Oh, that's your birthday. That's what you... Let's give a happy birthday to the Alderman from the 4th Ward. Happy birthday. Early. Any further announcements? Alderman from the 17th, you recognize on the motion to excuse.
Yes, Mr. President, I move that we excuse the older people from the 2nd and 21st wards.
Moved by the Alderman from the 17th. Entertain a second on that motion. Seconded by the Alderman from 22nd, excuse me. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion carried. The nose, that was close. Alderman from the 17th, you recognize on the motion to adjourn.
Yes, Mr. President, I move that we adjourn until next Friday, October the 31st.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 17th. Entertain a second on that motion. Seconded by the Alderwoman from the 6th. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed. Stand adjourned.